Hello, everybody. I'm Tom Vasel.
Hey, everybody. It's me, Rahdo, Richard Ham.
Let me know who's louder and who needs to be quieter, and I'll make that happen. It's always me who's louder. Uh, I
Why
think
is that?
it's
Just turn it to begin with.
yeah, I know. It's a function of Ecamm. It makes the main user louder than the video comes through the internet. I don't know why.
Just so you can bowl over everybody, I'm sure, and keep them in their place, more than likely.
I'll tell you what though. I am for a very inexpensive program. Ecamm has done well this year. I also, for everyone yells about how awful Skype and Zoom and Ecamm and all this stuff are, but they don't charge a lot for them.
Yeah,
And if you remember, if I wanted to call you, say, 20 years ago on the phone, I would sit ahead of time before calling you and think very carefully about how fast I could say everything so I didn't pay long distance. I was trying to explain to my college daughter what long distance phone calls were and gave up.
yeah. And you have to call after hours for the evening rates and all the rest of it.
That's right. I
For
forgot
dinosaurs.
about evening rates.
Yeah, very important.
Well, folks, welcome to Corner to Corner, our end of the year overview. Today will be a special show for a couple reasons. One, we're taking a look back at 2020, so we'll ignore all our regular features, and we'll just talk about 2020. You have a chance to jump in and be involved. Hang on one second. I'm hearing, before we go any farther, people are saying your mic sounds a little off.
Really?
That's on me, though. Oh, they said that they think it's coming through your camera mic rather than your main
Okay,
mic.
let me, all right, so microphone is set to the Yeti.
No, we don't hear it tapping when you touch it.
Really? That's weird. How exciting! We've done this 28 times. You'd think I'd have it down by now.
Yeah.
What the heck? Right, so this is the Yeti microphone. The Yeti microphone is on, but you're saying you literally do not hear this, which means, oh, there goes my,
Well, I definitely don't hear it now.
okay. Well, all right, that's weird. I'll just try to switch to a backup microphone. Hold, please. Properties. Device. All right, there you go. Not the Yeti. We're going to go over to the Takstar and turn that on. Oh, wait. Oh, how's that? Is that any better?
Sounds
That
the
make a
same.
difference? No, it's the same? All right, then we're switching to the Takstar. I'll be here right back.
All right. I'm now going to do a top 10 of why Rahdo's wrong about pretty much everything.
Now's the
Oh,
time.
the headphones didn't turn off. Never mind.
All right, now in theory, yeah, this is on. So yep. This is what it should be. I don't know if that's any better.
It really sounds like it's coming through your computer.
I don't know what that means.
So you're looking at your Skype settings, right?
Oh, Skype. Skype, right. Skype is the thing that holds it all together. Maybe Skype is completely ignoring OBS. Let's come over here. Why would they have done this? I know you said not to complain about Skype, but I might start complaining about Skype pretty vociferously. Yes! What is this default communication device, Skype? Use Yeti Nano.
There you go. Oh, hang on. Now I hear nothing. There we go. Talk.
I am talking.
Yep. There you go. That fixed all the problems.
Skype! How dare you not work perfectly considering the fact that you're completely free software that literally is magic compared to the wildest dreams of what we could have imagined as children.
Well, also the things that we complain about. Like, you ever go back and listen to radio shows and stuff when someone called in? They'd be like, I'm calling from next door, but it sounds like I'm in Alaska.
Yep.
All right. Anyhow, so yes,
Ready to proceed.
end of the year show. We're just basically over the course of the next hour, just talking about the end of the year. It's a three-way conversation, both of us and you. So if you have things that you would like us to talk about, we both already have done our top 10 lists and other things too. In fact, I saw that you're getting ready to do your anticipated games.
Yeah.
I usually wait till
Always how I
January
start
on
every
that
year.
one because there's a lot that don't get announced yet.
Yep. It's always a largely meaningless gesture because guaranteed my best games of the year will not, no one will have heard about them on January 1st. But I'm sure I'll still find a good solid 25 that are worth getting excited about.
Oh, sure. Well, just because of the fact you do Kickstarter previews gives you a big leg up on that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of, this I'm very excited about. I'm actually going to be filming it after we're done. It's Darwin's Journey from Simone Luciani and Nestor. Oh, Nestor, I always forget your last name. You're right here on the box, so aren't you, Nestor? Nestor Mangoni, the team who brought us Newton. Although, Luciani. Oh, he's one of my favorite designers. Zolkin and Marco Polo, Grand Austria Hotel. And this is fantastic. It is a worker placement game where you slowly train your workers in different disciplines so they have access to different worker placement spots, or you can basically supplement their basic knowledge with specialized knowledge. And it's all about, exploring the Galapagos and making all kinds of discoveries to further the, discovery of evolution. It's great, as good as you would expect from this team. I'm very excited. Jen and I played it the other day. I can't wait to film it now, and I think it goes live on Kickstarter. It'll probably be, spoiler, it'll be in my top 25 most anticipated for 2021.
There's not a lot of spoilers with your list because you're very open about your things. So,
That's true. It is
actually have a review going up today, which is my current favorite game of 2021, but that's because I played a total of, I think, one game. Although maybe Cubitos counts as 2021, maybe.
It is a 2021 game, and it would be in my top 3 games of 2021 that I've played so far.
Okay.
Because I've played.
Well, yes, it's easy to make these sorts of lists. So that's one thing we're talking about 2020. We'll get into that in just a second. The other thing is, hey, it's the end of 2020. This is the last show of this Corner to Corner in 2020, and sadly the last show for a bit or a while.
Dun dun dun.
Well, I want to be really clear. I'm not saying never. Folks, this isn't anything bad at all. It's just that I felt like we're doing really good at this point in time. So we started this partially because we wanted to give people more content while they were stuck at home. Now, I'm not saying that next week you're no longer stuck at home. Do not take this as any indication of that. Listen to your governments. But at the same time, we need to do other things and get things together. And this has been some work going back and forth doing this. Yeah. And we had a good time and a lot of fun. And Rahdo is definitely always invited on the Dice Tower to do all sorts of things. Well, let me be clear. I got to prove those things, I still, actually, one of my favorite top 10s we ever did was the top 10 area control game. I don't know if you remember that. It was a while ago. You came down to visit us at the Dice Tower.
Oh, right, in Florida, yeah. You mean Jason.
Yeah.
Yes, and we did 2 back-to-back. That and Pick Up and Deliver. And none of us could agree on the basic precepts of what we were actually talking about, if I recall correctly.
That's true. So, anyhow, that's what's going on. But let's take a look now at 2020. Now, 2020 obviously was defined by the coronavirus. To pretend otherwise would be disingenuous. However, I think sometimes that we allow that to be the only defining thing of the year. And it's not. Other things did happen over the course of the year from... obviously there was political stuff, which I don't want to jump into. And there was, but in the board game realm, lots of things went on. In fact, I would wager to say that board gaming as a whole, there's parts of it that aren't doing so hot, but as a whole, board gaming is doing just fine coming at the end of the year.
As a hobby, it is stronger than it was this time last year. So you agree on that as a whole, it's doing better? Yes. I mean,
or at least as good.
It was a art form, for lack of a better term, that was very well positioned to capitalize on this year. More people stuck at home, wondering, well, God, I am hanging out with these people way too much. We have to come up with something. And we've already done 20 500-piece puzzles. I'm not doing that anymore. Anything other than another puzzle. Hey, well, and what about Monopoly? No, gosh, no. But there must be something other than Monopoly. What's this? Something called Pandemic, which I think to recall, didn't Matt Leacock say at one point that Pandemic, in spite of what one might assume, was surging, having bigger sales than it had in quite a while?
He did say that. And I think that's because, let's be honest, I don't see. I can see why you might not want to play Pandemic because the theme makes you sad. But in Pandemic, you are stopping the disease, which I think is like a thing that we all aspire would happen. It's a positive game. Well, not if you lose, but it's a positive forward game. You're working together to stop the diseases. So I think that's something I would like to do. It reminds me back in World War II, there were people, the kids would play where someone would be Hitler and the kids would go get Hitler, right? Yeah. Because that was something they wanted to happen. Mm-hmm. And so this is the same thing here, except our Hitler is a virus.
Yeah, that's what I would tell people is, as I covered a Pandemic game this year, Hot Zone, the little, super fast express game. And people say, oh, how can you cover this right now? I mean, it's just, capitalizing on, all the suffering around the world. Like, no, it is epitomizing the best of humanity. It is telling a story of people working together to overcome incredible odds. And it is celebrating, those who are on the front line trying to save everybody. I found it moving in a positive way, playing a game of Pandemic this year, and being reminded of all the sacrifices people were actually making to help everyone and coming together. So, yeah, I never really felt that way. But, it is also a reflection of the fact that I think a lot more people were playing board games this year than ever before.
I actually have an expansion for a game I reviewed a couple years ago called Plague Incorporated.
Oh.
Where you were the virus.
Yeah.
And trying to destroy the world. And I never ended up playing or reviewing that expansion this year.
That I think I'd be significantly less comfortable playing at this point, including the offshoot Pandemic Contagion, where you play as the virus instead. I think those probably hit a little too close to home right now, yeah.
So what would you say, and folks, you can jump in here if you like, what are the trends of 2020? So you mentioned more families are playing games because you're running into that being possibly your only game group.
Yeah. Yes. I'm sure a lot of gamers
for you is okay, right?
Yeah. Well, for us, it was no big deal at all. I mean,
it's the same thing.
Just, par for the course. One thing I thought was very, very cool, again, as a response to the pandemic, a bunch of publishers said, hey, we know you're all stuck at home, and how about we try to lift your spirits by giving you free print and play games? A bunch of publishers did this. Jamie Stegmaier did it.
But how many people actually printed those games?
I don't know, but what the cool things is, I know of at least 3 of them that are going to be turned into commercial games because they were liked enough. Pandoria Merchants was one. It made my top 10 of the year. It was so good. Jamie Stegmaier has one that he's going to be actually professionally producing, although you can still just download it and print it out free right now. I think Board and Dice have one as well. A lot of them were literally just print and plays. I'm sorry, not print and plays. They were roll and writes. Which means all you got to do is just print out a couple pieces of paper, and if you've got some dice, you can play it. And I thought that was actually very, very cool. Just a small way for publishers to help out. It's literally the same thing we did. You started this show as a response to the fact that people were going to be stuck at home a lot more, and you took it upon yourself to entertain everyone around the world for what you thought was going to be a couple of months.
Yeah, that's like when I started those daily chats. I was like, I'll do this for a couple of weeks. Yeah, well, I think there's that. It has definitely fostered. It's weird. So there's someone mentioned here in the thing, there's more online collaboration. You and I have talked more this year, and we haven't seen each other in person than we did when we were crossing paths at cons. And that's because at a con, usually it was like, and then I would get sucked into an hour-long conversation with Rahdo.
Passing at night.
And then I'd be like, Rahdo, you're wasting my time. I got things to do and people to see. And so I have liked that. I've actually, don't get me wrong, I miss going out and seeing people. I miss cons, and I can't wait till they come back and things like that. But I have not disliked the slower pace. I have not disliked the fact that I personally have spent a ton more time with my family than I've ever spent before. I have 2 daughters now who will play pretty much any game I bring to the table. I'm not bringing Lacerda games, but
pretty much. Well, that's probably not one you would necessarily bring to a table yourself, actually.
Well, that's true, but let me try to think of it. I'm not bringing Twilight Struggle, I guess, and that's a game I would play. So I've liked that, and I've liked the more family time. A big trend, and many people have mentioned this here in the chat, is solo gaming.
Yeah.
It's hard now to imagine a game coming out that does not have solo stuff in it.
Yeah. Solo gaming was already on the rise anyway.
Sure, but this
in
really
2019.
accelerated it.
Yeah, in the same way that a few years ago, two-player couples gaming was on the rise. Because if you go back 10 years, I am shocked, or 15 years, most games didn't really seem to care about two-player gaming. And it's really over the last decade that we've seen such a huge rise. And I think now we were already starting to see solo getting that same big bump because, nobody looks askance at somebody doing the crossword of the Sudoku puzzle in their in their newspaper. So why is it such a big jump to say, well, how about I play a proper board game solo too? It's still a fun puzzle to solve. It's still a great narrative experience, depending on what you're playing. And this year, you're right, it has very quickly become almost mandatory. Oh, do you want to be successful? You might want to include a solo mode in there. It's not just a one and done forgotten thing anymore. And, some designers have really risen to prominence too. Dave Turczi and Morten Peterson are like, the dueling princes of solo design. You keep seeing their names pop up on all these games all over the place because they specialize in converting multiplayer gaming into a fun solo experience. And I mean, to me, that's very exciting to see.
I would say that I think I wish it wasn't always as big of a thing in a game. Not because I'm anti-solo gaming, far be it. I played more solo stuff this year than the rest of my life combined. But because I don't always want solo in a particular game. Let's say it's an interactive game. And I worry as a consumer, sometimes the amount of stuff in it that's added for the solo game adds quite a bit to the price, and I feel like it's wasted.
Oh, you think?
Sometimes, sometimes there's a whole separate scenario book or a whole extra couple decks of cards or pieces, and it's a lot of extra stuff, and that adds to the cost of the game itself. I don't know of a solution because to sell an extra solo pack, first of all, that would enrage people.
Yeah. Well, there is an easy solution that most everybody has in their pocket, which I don't have in my pocket right now, so I can't use as a prop, is phones.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's expensive, though, too.
The development, it depends on where you go. I mean, I have a friend who actually got an app to do basic scorekeeping for his game, and he basically found some programmers, I think, in India on Fiverr, and it cost him a couple $100 to get a really nice, solid, well-produced little app. So, I mean, there are options out there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's more people are watching solo reviews. It's very simple now. I mean, I've been putting it off for a while on the Dice Tower to do a solo game of the year for the Dice Tower Awards, but we might do that next year.
That is interesting. It's the same way. I think you had to be almost pulled kicking and screaming to include a co-op, didn't you?
No.
A few years ago?
No.
Maybe I'm thinking of something else then.
I'm on the front line of the co-op thing because I think co-ops are the best way to introduce people to the hobby because we're working together to beat a game.
Yep.
No. The reason I haven't done solo games in the past is not for any other nefarious reason than just when I said who wants to do one, 3 people raised their hand essentially, and I thought that's not enough for a vote.
Oh, on your voting committee, there
right.
is the same reason you don't do war game because you just don't have enough expertise amongst your voters.
Yeah. Well, also I would be worried that the war gamers, then the heavy war gamers, will come in and just criticize it. There already is war game things, so I don't know that war games needs its own genre award from the Dice Tower. We're not doing a fantasy games and train games. We're not doing any. The only thing we do a mechanism cooperative game, but I think that's legitimate. Especially after this year, because I would argue
because cooperative is not a mechanism; it is a genre. I mean,
yeah, but it's not
contrary to what Board Game Geek would have you believe.
It's not a theming; it's a way to play a game. It is a style, and what I mean is it's huge. And I want to say I think there was more of these in 2020 than ever before. I made a top 10 cooperative games, and I could have probably done a top 25. There was that many cooperative games that came out. And cooperative games also just naturally move themselves to solo. Because if
Oh
you
yeah,
can play
yeah.
a game
If
co-op,
they've
you
done the
can play
work
it
to
solo.
be cooperative, it's not too far to take that extra step and make it solo compatible too.
That's interesting. That would be an interesting list. A list of cooperative games that don't work solo.
What?
There's got to be some, right?
Either I dropped out or you dropped out there for a second. A list of cooperative games that.
Oh, sorry. A list of cooperative games that don't work solo.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, yeah. I mean, right
and
off the bat,
excluding
there's
trader
the Mind.
stuff.
There's the Mind and Hanabi.
Right.
Yeah, those aren't going to work very well.
I could beat
Unless,
the Mind
again,
by
you have
myself.
a really fancy app that uses the camera phone to look at your cards while you hold them up to the camera. Which, honestly, if that came out, I would definitely try that. I
Well,
would
no,
definitely
because
want to give that a go.
how would it simulate a person? It would be a robot. It should make the game easier because it would always play a card. How would you program that?
It would be an interesting AI
play
challenge.
cards 7 at 7
All I know
seconds
is-
in.
I never thought about before, but now it's all I want to play is solo Hanabi holding my cards up to a camera so it will tell me, oh, the third one. What? Why are you telling me that? Why you told me that 5 times, camera? Stop it.
All right. There are also other trends of this year. There's a few trends. One trend is everything under the sun. Vasel's law used to be every great game will be eventually reprinted.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about modifying it to being, did you make any money at all? It's going to be reprinted. And not only are these games reprinted, we're retheming them, they're reworking them, they're doing a second version of them. They're saying, hey, you like Raiders of the North Sea? Here's Raiders of Scythia. Hey, you like Gloomhaven? Here's Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. And these games are the reprints or reworkings or whatever you want to call them. There is a ton of them.
Yeah.
It's hard to find when people say, can I make the Holy Grail list? The list of games that are out of print and I wish they would reprint them. That's a hard list to do now.
Because it's likely they will come along. I mean, I did a games that will probably never see a reprint of, so here's some alternatives you could try. I did that video a few years ago. I went back and recently looked, and I think all but 3 of them have now been reprinted. It's with good reason. I've mentioned this before, that as our industry grows and gets more mature, I think publishers are wise to follow the Hollywood model. Because in Hollywood, hey, you know what? Back in the 80s, that RoboCop movie was a big deal.
Yes.
So we could put out a new movie now and just cross our fingers and hope for the best that it will find an audience. Or we can remake RoboCop, which already has an audience. It's proven. And I mean, it just mitigates our risk. And the same thing is true here. They could come out with a completely new train game, or they could envision Brass. And all those people who've heard about Brass can finally get Brass. And if they just put out a completely new game, it would not have been anywhere near as close to guaranteed. I mean, when I was doing my top 10 this year, almost half of my list could have been Deluxeified 2.0 reprints, because some of my favorite games got a big hit. And to a lesser extent, the same thing happened the previous year. I think it's just going to continue more and more because publishers are realizing, well, yeah, we can actually make smart business decisions and actually kind of clean up. I mean, there was a time a few years ago when the joke was, hey, how do you make $1 million in the board game industry? Well, you start with $2 million.
Yes.
And that kind of thing. But I think the industry as a whole is growing enough where there can be more almost cutthroat or just very bottom line business decisions that drive it, which is an interesting evolution because it didn't used to be that way. When I got into the gaming 10 years ago, it really felt a bit more passion, and there's still obviously tons of passion. And this is still an industry where if you have a dream, you can put it in a box and find success. That's not something you can do in Hollywood or writing or most other creative endeavors. Board games are still that way for now.
Well, you mentioned something in there, which I think is another thing, and I don't know if this is a positive trend or not. So tell me what you think. You mentioned the Deluxeified reprints.
Yeah.
We've got to a point now where it seems like companies are falling over themselves to make a bigger version than the other companies.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Every box is so huge and massive, and if it's not, you can buy an extra empty box that is that huge and massive, and there's 7,000 expansions and variants that come out simultaneous with the game. And this used to be like the Come thing that happened.
Yep.
But it is not just them. I mean, take a look at the recent Cleopatra and the Society of Architects, or Dwellings of Eldervale, or all these games and every Lacerda game that comes out from Eagle Griffin. And these companies are all, I mean, Suburbia came out with that giant box for Suburbia, and they're just about to do the same thing this coming January for Castles of Mad King Ludwig.
Yeah, yep, exactly.
And the human being only has so much space in their house. Remember like 4 or 5 years ago, there was that trend of micro games, right?
Yeah.
That is not the current trend in gaming.
No. Bigger is better. And it's an interesting contrast because 5 years ago in a video like this, it would not be at all uncommon for us to be complaining about what's with all these gigantic boxes full of air.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it was just, it was battle for shelf space. I've only got 120 cards and some stick, but we'll still put it in a Ticket to Ride size box so it'll look bigger in the store. Now we're complaining about, okay, the boxes are twice as big and they're complete. You can barely get all the stuff back into them. And that's in such a short time, such a huge shift. But you're right. I mean, it's definitely here, and it's just smart business sense because, from a production point of view, there's initial cost of goods, but it gets to the point where, you can just throw in a couple more cards. You can just throw in a couple more punch boards. You've already crossed that threshold, and it's diminishing cost to put more in. So let's put more in because we're competing with everybody else who has a double stuffed box that is completely full to the brim, and we've got to draw attention.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about it.
Yeah.
I think that I like, don't get me wrong, I like having a huge game, but there's a couple problems with having these huge games. One, some of them I don't play because as much as I like the game, to get it out and set it all up is behemoth
The intimidation factor.
And then put it back in. Or just it's almost as much work to get the game out and play it as it is to just play the game.
Yeah.
The second is I'm slightly worried that the hobby is increasingly moving out of the range of lower class of financial people.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, it's kind of niching itself into like a really extreme elite experience you're worried about.
Yeah, because I mean, if you want the best version of this game, you need to shell out $200. I mean, all these games are. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of inexpensive games out there, for sure.
Yeah.
But how many Kickstarters now were it just, I still remember the first time a game went over 60 and people complained. Now people don't even blink when a game easily goes over 100.
Yeah. Well, it's to be expected. I mean, the
Besides
publisher
inflation.
justifies that, but with all those cardboard shits and all those minis and whatnot. I mean, that's certainly true, but I don't know. At this point, I think it's too early to call that in the same way that a few years ago, everybody said, oh, digital apps are these are the future. And no, they're not. Legacy games, from now on, we'll have to destroy all our games so they can get more nice. No, hasn't really happened. There have always been these cool, new, hot, exciting things. And right now, in a post-Gloomhaven world, in a post-Kingdom Death Monster world, or your Dwellings of Eldervale could have been a nice, unassuming little worker placement game with a board and some pieces and some standees, but they went the extra mile. But, the majority of my top 10 list for this year was not that type of game. And I wonder at some point, if everybody keeps chasing after that, you're getting diminishing returns. Because I know you've complained about this in the past. I don't have time to, for this game that offers me 2,000 hours of gameplay. How about something that's just kind of fun to get out and play once every couple of months and put back? And, as players collect more and more Awakened Realm games and Cool Mini or Not games, and they realize, well, we can't play all of these, that I wonder if the pool for enthusiasm for that will start to diminish. Because what did I love? I loved Calico, which was my number one game of the year, is an amazing game, and it's a tiny, small, beautiful little unassuming game that I suspect owners of will get a lot more play out of a year from now than owners of the latest big box super game. And I think there's still
I agree
hope
on
for
that.
But Calico will never be as big a hit as those, but it's still a passion-driven industry, as I mentioned earlier.
I'm just picking trends of 2020.
Yes.
And I think that's a trend. I'm just hoping that that's not the thing, that's for everything. Yes, big box games deserve, I think they're great to have. I just hope that not every game needs to be that big.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, has that happened in the video game industry? With the dominance and rise of Grand Theft Auto style, huge epic games that offer thousands of hours in a world you will never explore all the nooks and crannies of. Those are clearly king of the hill in the video game industry. But that has not prevented tons of really great, smaller, more intimate, less ambitious games from coming out and finding audiences.
I just don't know that that's necessarily a straight for straight comparison, because when I play Breath of the Wild or any of these open world games, I can just drop in and play. I don't need to look at 6 different rule books and look up extra stuff. I'm just running around doing my thing. And that's why I think open world games appeal to people, because they almost feel ruleless. I don't have to figure out how to get past. If I can't get past this point, forget it. I'll go do something else.
I'll do something else.
They're actually my favorite, probably my favorite thing in a video game. So other trends. We talked about gaming grew as a whole, but there was an obvious effect of the coronavirus in the sense of how people got games. So you and I have both been around long enough to back when online game stores first showed up, and there was huge debates online about how terrible they were for the hobby and how they were destroying the hobby. I like to say that that's been conclusively proved false, since the hobby still exists 15 years after these debates started. But it's still growing faster than ever as well. That's the thing. So local game stores. I love good local game stores. I really do. They're fantastic. But I was told specifically that if the local game stores ever all shut down, the hobby would die. Well, because they are the ultimate gateway. Those are the things that turn regular muggles into gamers, because they're down at the local mall, and I've walked by this place so many times. I'm just going to step in and see what it's all about. And you get a good clerk, like I did over a decade ago when I just stumbled into Blue Highway Games in Seattle, Washington, expecting to try and just pick up a copy of Scrabble, and I walked out with Pandemic, and it changed my life. I'm the living example of that. And yes, there's a concern that without that wait for people to get their foot through the door, that it's going to fundamentally change the trajectory of the industry. I don't expect that's really going to be the case, though. Well, that's the thing, though. The stores all did shut down for a couple months. And in fact, even now, the majority of stores, you cannot go play games in them. At best, you can go in and shop and go around. I know that some stores are allowing people to play games in masks and stuff. So, I mean, I know that stuff exists, but it's not the same. That being coupled with a rise this year of many games, not just online, but Target and Barnes & Nobles and other places opened up their selection huge. And Kickstarter just came in swinging to where I still think, I didn't know where Kickstarter would land, but they are definitely on the forefront for a hobby gamer. Yes. If all you did was buy Kickstarter games, you could be satisfied easily. You wouldn't feel like you were missing out on too much. Oh, totally. Yeah, at this point, if I had to choose between direct-to-retail games or Kickstarter games, I could only own one for whatever reason, some capricious spirit forced me to choose. I'd probably go with Kickstarter stuff. That's where those really big experiences you were talking about truly exist, and it's also where you still, to this day, in spite of people's complaints, find the cute, quirky, offbeat little things that would never have been able to exist if it weren't for Kickstarter. That dream still exists on Kickstarter, in spite of the fact that you have your cool minis or knots and whatnot, dominating so much of the oxygen. I think the reality is, if it's true, and it certainly was for me, that the friendly local game store was a huge, very important stepping stone for the industry, at some point, the industry or the genre or the hobby as a whole reaches enough critical mass that it can be self-sustaining. I have converted many people that are friends of my wife into gamers. It wasn't another store that did it. It was me. And I think they have the potential to go on. And as powerful and useful as a friendly local game store clerk was, now you can just do a Google search for best board games to start out with. And you will find lots of really great articles that do that as well. The internet, in terms of commerce, in terms of information sharing, in terms of everything, is changing
all of human society, and it's doing it daily, and it's affecting the board game industry as much as anything else. My wife, these days, as a glass artist, sells the vast majority of her work online through Etsy. 10 years ago, she stole the vast majority of her work through local galleries that she developed relationships with. And, local game stores are suffering now. Local galleries are suffering now, too, because people just go to Etsy instead. This is a fundamental sea change for humanity as a whole. And
sure, but it affects gaming a lot in that regard. And I agree. I want to be clear. This is not something I'm joyful or schadenfreude, but I am a little satisfied in the fact that I have been saying that the local game stores are not as critical to the hobby as they said they were. But like, if we go away, what's going to happen? The hobby will survive because the hobby is mostly about people playing games and introducing people to games. Now, good game stores, and there are many of them out there, but not a ton because there's not a ton of gaming stores left, really. Exactly. But good gaming stores are going to survive this, and they are surviving this, and some of them are doing well in this.
Yep.
But you're going to see, folks, I predict more. We already see a ton of games this year that the only way to have gotten them was through Kickstarter or through a pre-order. Yeah. And
that's just smart business for the publisher because they cut out the distributors, they cut out, all of that stuff, so it's just more profit for them directly if they can, do that direct business with the end user.
Sure, and what's their reason for doing otherwise? Shame. Like, it's I still don't understand why a person who makes a game, it's their responsibility. If people buy their game, why is it their responsibility to care about a store in Albuquerque, whether that store sells their game or not?
Yeah.
We have to be cautious sometimes. People say support your local game stores, but many of us, and this I'm included in this number, we don't really have a local game store. The closest one at my place is 30 minutes away, and it's an offshoot of Cool Stuff. The closest actual game store that's not an online game store is an hour and 10 minutes from my house. So there's a lot of people in that situation, but Amazon has really stepped things up. It's really easy, not just, and as you said, a dynamic shift that people can get stuff anywhere.
Yeah.
So
I think
I don't know what's going to happen here.
To counter that, I do think there was a moment where they were an important stepping stone, and we've kind of moved past that. Sure. And it's unavoidable. I mean, they are going to be affected by this. It's literally, 10 years from now, the friendly local game store is going to be a niche store, much like you can still go out and buy vinyl. For people who are really hardcore into that. I mean, when we grew up, I'm sure you spent many hours in Tower of Records like I did. And that's disappeared now because the industry shifted and people got their content in a different way. And it's going to be no different. And we lose something. What's that John Cusack movie about a record store with Jack Black? High Fidelity.
Yes.
That actually chronicles a time when there was this central thing that brought everybody together, and that's gone. And it's been replaced by the comment section on YouTube for music fans getting together and that's just not the same. At the end of the day, there will still be board game stores out there to provide that service, and it's not that they're providing the service of actually getting the games. They're providing the service of having a community that can rally around. Unfortunately, there'll be fewer and far between, and that is sad. There's no two ways about it, but it's also inevitable.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just to me, the whole thing's fascinating, and the biggest thing is the rise of the internet, right?
Yeah.
I no longer have to go to the store to hunt down that one other 18XX player. I can now just go online and be like, who else plays 18XX games within 50 miles of me? I can find them. Yeah. Board Game Geek's numbers have gone up tremendously this year. So let's talk, though, on the other flip side. The board gaming thing that hurt even worse than online game stores this year. I mean, board game stores this year. The thing that was absolutely devastated by the coronavirus were conventions.
Yes.
You and I said goodbye at Dice Tower West, and that was the last convention other than, I think, Ericon in England, and that was it then. They all shut down. Had I known that, I would have gone to Gamma just to have been like, woo, one last time.
The first time you're like, okay, I'm going to take a break from Gamma this year.
I know. I was so annoyed about that. So that's a thing. And so this is coming from someone who runs conventions. This is an incredibly frustrating experience for all the convention runners. It's expensive. I've lost so much money on the Dice Tower conventions this year.
Wow, really?
Well, yeah. And fortunately,
Even with the force majeure clauses in your contract and all
yeah,
of that?
but that doesn't cover everything. So let's say you're paying people salaries to do stuff. There's always fees when you buy tickets and transferring stuff. It is just an expensive ordeal. And then you're caught in these catch-22. So Dice Tower East is supposed to be this coming July. Can we have it? I don't know. People online are going to scream either way, right? Oh, you should have it. You shouldn't have it. Whatever. But the fact of the matter is, we don't know. We don't know if we can have it. So can I sell tickets to it? If you don't sell tickets and then we can have it, we lose money. If you sell tickets and we can't have it, then you got to figure out what to do with those tickets and yada, yada, yada. And that's a small convention. Think about what Gen Con's going through at this point in time.
Yep.
They have
and Essen and
Well, yeah, Essen at least has a little bit longer, but the fact is you have to make these contracts way in advance. Now, you better believe every single contract in existence will mention a virus, at least in
now on,
some sort of terms from now on. But it's a tough call because people want to get back together, and we're already being divided into people who are screaming that we shouldn't get back together until 2022.
Yep.
Some people want to get back together tomorrow. The fact of the matter is we don't know. We really don't, and we just go from week to week. I believe in hope. I have hope, but I also listen to what I'm told to do. There's
as you should. And it's interesting. We were talking a few minutes ago about the huge impact online gaming experience how it's fundamentally changed the industry. This is one place where it hasn't, because everybody and their mother tried to say, okay, virtual conventions, that's the thing. And I mean, you did one or two yourself. And
I want to be clear. What we did,
it is not the same.
I'm not calling what we did a convention. We're calling them the Spectaculars, the Summer Spring Spectacular, because it's not a convention. It's just a big show we're putting on, and we hope people enjoy it. But it's not a con. And I'll go on record and say I think both Gen Con and Essen weren't very good.
No.
And in fact, the only good one I saw that worked in any sort of way was Board Game Geeks, and even that wasn't huge. Then they did the best at it as they could, but it's a tough thing. Until I can put on goggles and walk up and say hi to people, a virtual con is not much more than a really busy chat room.
Yes.
Now, online gaming is improving in vast leaps.
If you want to talk about the other trend of the year, obviously, that's something. I remember this time last year, I think the Tabletopia guys, they were hurting a bit. They had not grown as fast as they thought, but now they've had huge growth. Of course, Tabletop Simulator continues to basically be a source for board game piracy for every single game in the industry. So there's that as well. And it's getting to the point where publishers now have to step up and start shutting it down, because it will come a point where it hurts them. That is where it's something that a few years ago people would have never touched with a 10-foot pole out of necessity, out of desperation for gaming. A lot of people who would have sworn never in a million years created accounts and signed up and got online and found that, well, it's not the same, but it ain't bad.
So someone here mentioned in a comment, they said that they never went to any conventions. Someone said conventions are very niche. Conventions are niche to some degree. Not everyone can go to conventions.
Yeah.
60,000 people plus are going to Gen Con and Essen. But they're incredible. They've been incredibly big in our hobby. There's no question. Influential,
yes.
Right. There's no question that all the board game companies, not all of them, but most of them, centered their releases around Gen Con and Essen. That did not happen this year. And that actually was kind of a cool thing, because we didn't have 800 games coming out at one time.
Actually, we still kind of did. It was just impossible to get them.
Well, sure, but what I mean is
the case.
But there was also people releasing games weeks before Essen because they didn't care. Usually they'd be like, no, well, wait, because everybody wants to have that really hot booth at Essen or really hot booth at Gen Con. But if Gen Con's not happening, or if it's virtual, it's not that big of a deal. I actually bought some games from the Gen Con virtual thing to see what it was like.
Oh.
So I bought a few games. They showed up a month later. That is not the same thing.
No. As stuffing them in your suitcase and taking them home and playing them that weekend. Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, I also went to Essen. I looked at the prices of the games you could buy at the Spiel. And they were saying, oh, you'll get this game in January, February. I'm like, yeah, but I don't need to actually go to this digital con to do that.
Yep.
So until they can, again, figure out how to do that, that has diminished these. And I've talked to many publishers who have told me they've saved quite a bit of money by not going to cons.
Yeah.
Gen Con booth prices were extremely expensive. So
ridiculously so, yes.
I'll tell you, like, our booth itself. Our booth is a 10 by 20 at Gen Con.
And that's kind of a medium size, right?
It's the
10 by 10, 10 by 20,
size.
and then you get into 20 by 20s.
Yeah, well, you couldn't even get a 20 by 20. Like, even if, like, I told him, I said, I'll buy a 20 by 20. I couldn't even get one. But my 10 by 20 cost $4,500, I think.
Okay.
That is not including anything like super expensive hotels for a week, flying everybody there, eating while you're there, and all that stuff. Cons are incredibly expensive. And then you've got to say, okay, well, how do I get my money back? Well, for a publisher, you don't. Let's say you have 300 copies of a popular game that's sold for $50 each. Mm-hmm. That's $15,000. That's not $15,000 profit, by the way. That's $15,000 you made. That does not cover the cost of your booth and hotels and airline tickets. And so they're just going there to get the buzz going on their games. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, is that worth it? Because they're sitting there counting off all these things. And remember, I said I have a 10 by 20. Asmodee had thousands of square feet. Think of how much they were paying. Some of these companies were paying in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to Essen and Gen Con.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. I would say that's an example of board game publishers almost sort of outsourcing the job that I think they are realizing they have to take on themselves, which is consumer engagement, building brand loyalty. I mean, you look at Jamie Stegmaier and Stonemaier Games, does not have to go to a convention ever again because he's got the longest list of people who are signed up, ready to get whatever he gets as soon as possible. That's something that I think, for the most part, has been kind of a foreign concept to board game publishers. They're like, no, we just make the thing, we send it to distributors, it's out there, and we move on to the next thing, and it just takes care of itself, right? Oh, we have to do something? All right, let's go to a convention where we can talk to people about it and try and get some, and ultimately, that's nowhere near as cost effective as just trying to develop a really strong following for your brand. And it's something that, I think more and more publishers really have to focus on that because they'll ultimately potentially get better results, a much better return on investment if they can pull it off.
So there's some good examples of that this year. You can look at the companies that put money into online marketing.
Yes.
And see how it worked. So, for example, we did our top 10 games this year, and everyone got on our case because we didn't mention the Lost Ruins of Arnak. This from us at the Dice Tower. Now, the Lost Ruins of Arnak was like my number 14 of the year, which I cannot emphasize how high that is out of hundreds of games, right? But it wasn't in the top 10. But why was everybody asking me about it? Was it because it was a really good game? It is a really good game, but CGE marketed the crap out of that game.
Yes, they are ahead of the curve.
Everyone about that game. Yeah. Pandasaurus and USopoly and other companies are going out there, Blue Orange and Boards and Dice and Awaken Realms. These companies are like, hey, we're going to go out there and market our games everywhere we can and as much as we can. And those are the games people hear about.
Yep.
And you can tell which companies are hurting a little bit who are not doing that.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, oh, you'll just find the game at your local store. No, I won't. Because I'm only going to be in that local store for 15 minutes. Or you'll play it at the next
convention. No, you won't. Because, exactly. Yeah, brand managers are fast becoming a thing. It used to be, really, your full-time job is just to get people excited about board games. And, it's getting to the point where that is a reasonable investment for even a small publisher to make. Because it'll have huge returns if they do their job well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fascinating thing to watch, and obviously we have a piece of the pie here in the steak. So it's always weird for me to say people should advertise online more and people should work more with reviewers when that's what we do. And yet, even though it is self-serving, that's what you should do. I am mind-boggled when a company doesn't send a Dice Tower review copy. Not because I'm egotistical and think we should get every copy, but just because it's like, it cost that company
It's
$10.
peanuts. Yes.
You know,
To the bottom line.
I actually laugh out loud now when I read a thread now where people are like, reviewers are in this to get free games. I have more games that I'm about to get rid of than a local game store has at this point.
Yep.
Mostly because we usually offload them at Dice Tower Con over the summer. That did not happen. So now we are sitting. It would make people sad
Your garage is full. Yeah, it's
to see the amount of games that are here. But I know those games cost companies almost nothing.
yeah.
And so if you have a new game, why you wouldn't send it to the top 50 to 100 reviewers blows my mind. And if you say, I have a really tight budget, then still sending out 10, because every reviewer who reviews your game will probably sell 1 or 2 copies at minimum, which automatically gets you that money back. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. And I think we're going to see shifts in the hobby because some companies aren't going to be able to pivot or just refuse to pivot with everything that's going on. And you're going to see some of these companies disappear as time goes by.
Wow.
I'm not calling out anyone, and I'm not even sure I'm thinking.
I was about to ask you to call somebody out.
Well, no, here's the thing. I'm not even sure.
You never get to specific, and that's probably for the best.
I'm not even sure, though, I'm thinking names in my head.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that if you ask me what companies are hot right now, I can list the companies that are doing a really good job at talking up their games.
Yes.
Like, for example.
And getting other people to talk them up, too. Yeah.
The guy who runs Scorpion Mask, which is in Yellow distributes their games. He just did a game, Master Word and all. That guy will, when convention season was there, he would hunt down every reviewer in the building personally and try to play the game with them. Now, you can't do that. So he is constantly emailing me and saying, I got this new game. Let me tell you about this game. Let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about this. Let me tell you about this. And I've seen more reviews of his little games than many other bigger companies because he's pushing them.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. So, 2021's on its way. I'm hesitant to make too many predictions about 2021, even though I made 10 of them yesterday. That, again, I just keep saying hope. That's my thing. But I also don't think gaming fell apart and we need to put it back together.
No. Well, the elements of it. It is, the friendly local game store was already on its way out, and this really pushed them to extinction that much faster. And that's genuinely sad. It's sad for the industry as a whole, and it's certainly very sad for the families who, made that their livelihood, and now they have to, obviously, of course, that, the worldwide pandemic and shutting down governments around the world has hit lots of people equally badly. But yes, the industry as a whole, the board games are still on the rise. I remember a few years ago, and it was just like, wow, that's really weird that you see them in the background of The Big Bang Theory on somebody's shelves. It's fast becoming where it's not unusual to see something on people's shelves in the background on TV now, because we are growing faster than honestly I would have expected. I thought we were a long ways off from the singularity of breaking through into pop culture.
Well, I'm getting less weird looks when I tell people what my job is now.
Yeah. Yeah, because you had a double weird of you do a YouTube show and it's about board games. That's a double whammy.
Sure. Well, it used to be like, you do a YouTube show and you're not 22? Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not talking about makeup or video games? Really?
Now, a lot of people, speaking of this, have entered our arena. There is no longer a few board game reviewers on the internet.
Indeed.
And in fact, I would argue that podcasting has gone down considerably over the year. Not that people are doing fewer podcasts, but that podcast listenership has gone down because commutes are down. I don't have any.
Oh, that's a really interesting observation.
I don't have any hard facts for that other than just personal people telling me. I look at my own numbers.
You have a podcast. It does tell you stats, You could look that up.
And it stayed pretty samey, maybe slightly lower. But the videos are definitely going up.
Yeah.
Views on videos are going up. However, that's competing with the fact that there is now I couldn't even give you a number of how many board game reviewers there are. There's probably 300. There's so many people doing what we're doing right now, which is fine. For some of those people, it's a way that they are passing the time because there's nothing else to do right now, so they're doing a video show. And that's fine. Some of those people are doing it because they lost their job and they're looking for a way to monetize. And some of the people are doing it because they love board games and just this is the time that they're starting. It just happens to be now. You'll see that the majority of these people will fade off the scene as time goes by. And I don't mean it to be negative. It just happens with everything in life.
Yeah.
But some of them are going to stick around and become big names in the future. Who are those people? I don't know yet. You know, but it is exciting to see there's a strong, diverse group of voices out there now.
Yep.
We're seeing constant growth. We're seeing people. I feel like I'm being pushed all the time by other reviewers, and I'm trying to make my stuff better, trying to think of new things to do.
I'm still coming for you, Tom.
He is. Rahdo started his own network now of reviewers.
Yep.
Well, look how many years it took you to get rid of a shaky camera. Come on, I'm not worried.
I was very slow to let that go, and now I look back and I'm, what was I thinking? It's so much easier now. Instead of holding a little iPhone 4, I was stubborn.
I just let something go in my first review today, and we'll see how long that lasts. But I've made a pretty major change that we'll see what happens.
Did you drop the drop?
We'll see.
Oh my, folks! Wow. Without Melody, that has to be such a pain to have to deal with.
Well, she hasn't done that in years.
I know.
This is the last year I have unmarried. This is the last week I have unmarried children. So, for me, this show has been a highlight this year, and I know people are all fussing in the comments about it. We appreciate that, but again, I will have Rahdo back on my show.
Oh yeah. I've done top 10s with you before.
Yes.
You know, I mean, this is an offshoot of us meeting at conventions and doing our little head-to-heads. And you thought that worked out so well, you wanted to have something online. We will meet again, Tom. We will meet again. Stay alive. I will find you.
Probably sooner than you all think. But this has been fun to do this year. I've had fun communicating with people. It's interesting to me. I don't know about you, but when I look at names in the chat now, I feel like I know hundreds of different people now that I get to talk to. And I'm at a convention, I'll be like, well, I'm so-and-so. And I'll be like, oh, it's you. You know, and I think that's cool. Yeah, for me, it's been a tough year in many ways for many people. I can't complain as much.
No.
People still watch our show. Board gaming seems to be doing okay. And the folks here who are watching and doing stuff are really enjoyable to hang out with. And, you know, every time I think that it's not the case, I'll watch other live shows in other hobbies, say video games. Mm-hmm. And I look at the comment section there, and I'm like, wow. I occasionally have to moderate a question or a comment, like very rarely. In video gaming, I'm mind blown by the things people say there.
Yep, yeah. Just step away, close the chat window, definitely. Yeah.
That being said, though, my daughter, who's sitting right next to me here, constantly reminds me that the people that she watches stream will have 100,000 people watching. We have currently 400.
She's keeping you humble.
Yeah, that's one of the perks of teenage children, if you've not noticed.
Yeah, it's very handy.
So, all right, you got anything? Any final thoughts on the year?
No, I am. You know, I'm about to do my most anticipated for next year, and first up, I went back and looked at the one I did last year on January 1st, and I was starting out. Oh, 2020 is going to be so great. I'm so full of hope and excitement, and enthusiasm, and optimism for a forward trajectory, and I'm a little hesitant to say that for 2021, but I still do feel that way. I am, in spite of everything as a species we have gone through this year, I do think we are still on a upward trend. And sometimes it's hard to see that, but across the arc of history, things are still always getting better, and that's true for the board game. And I'm still so happy and so lucky that I get to share it with my wife and my best friend, Jen. She is my number one and pretty much only gaming partner for most of the year. And I'm just incredibly thankful.
And on that note, something that
Yes.
Rahdo did a couple years ago, and I've started doing, is I'm cutting out some of the more negative areas of the internet out of my life completely.
Yes. Yeah.
Really helps bring your attitude around to a positive thing.
Yep.
People don't realize it, and I encourage you all to affirm people. If you like something that someone does, not me, I'm not asking for emails from me, but if you like something that someone does, tell them you like it.
Yeah.
Tell them it's a good job. There's not enough of that going around. Enough people tell them when it's a bad job.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, every morning I get up and I look at the comments that have gone on my channel over while I was asleep, and it's very, very difficult to get past the, oh man, you're mean, you're nasty. But the number one thing that helps is, well, you know what? For every one of those, there's 20 that are, I love your show so much, Rahdo. It's really made my day. It really helped me out. And I mean, you have to remember, people putting this stuff together, they are human beings, and we respond to kindness. And I mean, if you can reach out and share that, you will be making someone else's life a little bit better. And it doesn't cost you anything to do it. It's so easy. You'll feel better for doing it too.
And if you have Disney Plus, go watch Soul.
Oh my gosh.
Super uplifting movie. I just watched it last night. And I wanted to walk out my door as soon as the movie was over. Just like, woohoo! But I couldn't because it was night and I need to stay inside. But, yeah.
All right.
Well, that's
so
it,
we're
folks.
ending Carter Corner with a corporate shill sellout. How much did you make for that there, Tom? Oh my God.
No, I don't care. No, yeah, I wish I was getting
Everybody gets your
Disney
yearly
money.
subscription for Disney Plus. Use the special code Tom says.
If I was getting Disney money, there would no longer be a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
All right. Well, again, folks, I'm not saying Corner to Corner will never come back. You never know. We'll see what happens. Thanks so much for watching. Rahdo, when's your next thing coming? You said you were doing your anticipated.
Oh yeah,
games.
this Friday.
Friday.
Join me live at 11 a.m. West Coast time, where I will be counting down my top 25 most anticipated games for 2021.
And I'll be live tomorrow playing Terraforming Mars on my channel with the new Prelude expansion.
Oh,
which
nice.
is considered to be essential by me. So,
All right.
Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Rahdo.
Have fun gaming, everybody.
Bye.